people have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to another edition of Let's Take Five, the podcast where we look at one of the greats of cinema and discuss their excellence and range. My name is Ray Martindale.
I'm Austin Lager.
And today we are beginning our conquest through our Charlie Chaplin Five. The 5 films we're going to cover are The Gold Rush, City Lights, Modern Times, The Great Dictator, and Monsieur Verdoux. I know I'm saying that wrong. But today we are starting off with The Gold Rush. The Gold Rush was a film that was originally released in what? When was it originally released? 1925. We actually, for this podcast, we did the 1943 version, which is the re-release Chaplin did, where he put in a new score and got rid of the title cards and did compose some dialogue to it. Well, it's mainly him just narrating, we'll put it that way. The Gold Rush is a story, takes place in Alaska. Gold has been found in Alaska, so there's a gold rush in Alaska. The lone prospector, which is the Tramp, travels to Alaska to cover gold. It starts out him in a cabin. He meets Big Jim and some other people. It's not as interesting as what comes later when he journeys into town and meets the lovely Georgia, who he falls in love with. And it's basically sort of what would we call it? It's not romantic, but but it can be romantic. It's basically an effort for a lot of this is put on the Tramp sort of finding love with Georgia, but also making money off the gold rush. So sort of a combination of the two with several pantomime Tramp usual hits and greatest hits, if as it were. So what do you think of the Gold Rush, Austin?
This one's charming.
Yeah.
This is a charming movie. This is something I did cover a handful of months ago on the Immortals, so I'm trying not to repeat myself a little bit, but it's such a really sweet movie, and it's such a movie about hope, and in many ways that's what makes it such a great setting for the gold rush itself. I mean, it's people traveling across the land to find gold to make a better life. I mean, it's the American dream squared, right? It's that, and so many of the Tramp stories are about class, and this one seems to be not as pointed as some of the ones we're going to get later, but it's very recognizing, like, the Tramp is a homeless man. These are starving people who really need to go up in the public sector in order to survive longer, essentially, and to have the beautiful, rich American dream. And it's very amusing to watch fate go up against that, because it's not, like, cruel, like, I don't know, the Book of Job would be. It's just silly, because it's they're bears.
Yeah,
the bear.
There's a great scene. It's one of. The Tramp has great introductions. I think he always knew to nail that, and he certainly does in City Lights too. But here, I really like it because it's the Tramp walking on the side of a mountain. And he walks by a little cave, and a live bear, comes out of the cave and follows him for a while. The Tramp has no idea that this bear's right on his trail. The bear goes into another cave, and then the Tramp turns around and looks behind him just as the bear does. And, of course, the dramatic irony is us thinking he was about to be eaten by a bear, and he'll have no idea. And that's basically how he spends his life. Yeah, I agree with you. It's a really, really charming movie. It's a really, really fun movie. The first part of it, it's almost one big pantomime sequence between Big Jim, who is the guy that he's out looking for gold, and then this criminal Black Larson. And they're out looking for gold, and they all get stranded in the same cabin together while, like, a snowstorm is blowing by. And some of it is very funny. On stage, I think it would be, like, absolutely ungodly hilarious. Film doesn't seem to translate back now, the theater to film, like it did then. But it's still pantomime genius. I mean, in particular, there's a part where Big Jim starts, because they're starving to death, Big Jim starts to imagine the Tramp as a chicken, and he literally is in a huge live chicken suit, and he's going to eat him.
Yeah.
And then the bear shows back up again, and they end up killing the bear and eating it. But yeah, no.
There is a moment when Big Jim, like, stops with the chicken and go, man, I'm really losing. I saw you the chicken. They laugh. And then kind of goes, no, I'm going to eat them.
Yeah.
Like, things have gotten so bad that he's, like, agreed, almost, like, legally. Like, nope, that's what I'm going to do.
And I saw where Chaplin was inspired by the Donner Party situation.
Oh, sure.
Donner Party, very famously, were people that ate each other. People know that, but they refer to it as the Donner Party because they could literally see the valley below the night before the snowstorm hit, and they figured, okay, we made it through the mountains, so we're going to have a party instead of actually getting down the mountain. Well, that night there was, 3 foot of snow, and they got stranded up there all winter, and they had to eat each other. Kind of a macabre way to segue, but it's definitely inspired by that.
Well, Life and Death, this is a very silly movie, and there's not actually, like, any thrills, like, the thrills in that regard. There are definitely thrills, but there's never, like, we're never worried no one's gonna die. Mm-hmm. In the same way, but you are watching characters on the verge of death, and that kind of changes the way of how you see the Tramp moving through the world. We'll see a lot in some subsequent films as well, but, I mean, the Tramp and Big Jim are outside in this blizzard where they almost can't survive. And they barge into somebody else's home and basically demands that they stay there. And, in modern day, that's really discouraging if 2 homeless people come into your house and say this. But there is this kind of Chaplin mindset of, like, the importance of charity and community that is so interesting because, like, especially you see with the beginning of this film, these actions need to happen or they are going to die. Mm-hmm. And it works a lot better. It works in a very fun, inviting way. And people who are against that idea, like the criminal, are villainous for more reasons, but for that as well.
Yeah, and I think there too is, or in there too is, like, obviously the links people will go to make money.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, that's definitely in the film, and how, like, not necessarily greed, but the pursuit of money is supplementing this sort of pursuit of happiness. This goal of achieving money at the risk of your own life. Is it worth your life to do this? That's definitely prevalent in this movie, and not. And I don't think it just contains itself to this movie as far as the Tramp's concerned. I mean, Chaplin himself was one of the richest human beings alive for the time. But that said, he definitely had a lot of opinions on economy and how people go to great lengths to get rich.
Well, it's so curious because you see other kind of comedic people from, after Chaplin. You get Hardy and Laurel. You get Marx Brothers. You get Abbott and Costello, and all of them typically are poor at the beginning for a lot of their one-off stories, and they want to be rich so they could have a big old mansion and giant cars and women and whatnot. The Tramp just needs money so he can have dinner tonight.
Yeah.
Like, he's not greedy in his ambitions. He just really wants to stop having to be so scared for food and shelter every day. I think that's what makes him such an interesting, nomad of a character. Is that
he is living one day at a time.
Yes.
His next meal is his most important meal. He's not thinking about the meal after that, and he's even the people he meets. He doesn't have he doesn't think fourth dimensionally. It doesn't go past just him living in the present because he doesn't have the luxury of having plans,
right?
Which is a big part of it. Which in this film accented here, and I think to greater effect in City Lights, but I find the Tramp to be an inherently sad character.
Yes.
He is funny and he makes us laugh, but Chaplin knew this too. There are definite moments where there's sort of like his eyes are more of a window to the soul type of thing, like to borrow a line from Tennessee Williams. There's something very, very sad about him and very, very isolating about him.
And so much is said about Chaplin as a filmmaker and Chaplin as a comedian, but I think Chaplin also is such an incredible actor because the way he chooses to underplay so many things. There's an incredible sequence where he's imagining that the women he invited to dinner actually showed up to dinner. And when he does the famous dinner roll scene where he makes them into dancing feet, his eyes are so simple's the wrong word, but like he's not drawing emphasis to how clever this is. He almost looks more like a mime, where he wants all the focus to be on the feet and not on him. Mm-hmm. It's just a very generous way and a very simple way to show the Tramp that he's not a largely like cartoonish facial expression. It's a very subdued and brilliant performance throughout all the films. That really is. It's almost like you sometimes forget he's a comedy icon sometimes until he falls off the edge of the boat.
Yeah,
or he has to run away from the bear, and it's a really nice, quiet man who's constantly in panic.
And those are my favorite parts. Those little character moments. The big pantomime set pieces, I'm not as big of a fan of in this film. City Lights, I like them more. I don't know if it's just the story of City Lights or it's just the. I don't know, the other characters I feel like are present in the room better than they are in the Gold Rush.
There's one that really worked for me, which was the house that was falling off the edge.
Except for the house falling off the edge. That's fantastic.
Which, I don't know how
I don't know.
This. Like, it keeps cutting back to what's clearly miniatures, but like there are people
great.
there and that's happening, and like the blizzard blew their house to the edge of the cliff.
Yeah, that's great.
And they're constantly like falling over the edge.
And the house is teetering. It's really good. Chaplin thought of himself as a pantomimist. He thought of himself as a mime. And that being said, you mentioned it's interesting because we see him as a mime, which is the greatest mime was able to be successful in a silent film era, when a film that's made in 1925. He's got to eventually grow into an actor too, which obviously he had the talent anyway. And yes, there's a Venn diagram of talents that definitely go into both, but his miming is so good, whereas, like, you watch everyone else and the scenes that he's in. In this movie in particular, I only watch him. When he's in the frame, it's impossible to look at anything else. I mean, it just is. You're constantly wondering or on the edge of your seat of what's the next gesture he's going to make? What's the next way he's going to move his cane? The way he's going to walk. Everything. It's really interesting. I don't think there's anything ever quite like that ever again. I mean, as far as he is always the focus. And granted, he wrote these films. He starred in these films. He directed these films. It was designed to be that way, but.
It's rare to have that kind of complete control. I mean, we have iconic comedy characters that get that kind of like attention, but so much is always focused on their use of language. I'm trying to think of like the most popular like leading film comedy characters recently, and you get people like Austin Powers or Borat, and those aren't silent performances. Something like Peter Sellers as Inspector Clouseau is closer because you can see him do certain things, but it's always still language is still very important. And they all, aside from, I guess, Mike Myers and Sacha Baron Cohen did write those films, but it's never had the complete control that Chaplin had, and such a way where it never feels like it's a big like ego trip. He didn't just like make an entire franchise of films that he had every inch of to show how great he is. He is making these stories, and he's making these stories with this incredible character.
Well, I don't want to look at anything else.
Yeah,
I mean that I think that's important too. It's never dull. I would say the opening scene where he turns into a chicken was probably the slowest part of the movie for me, just because that was an instance where a scene was existing with an absence of any real plot yet.
Right.
It was just simply they're in Alaska and they're looking for gold. And now this guy's trying to eat this guy. That's basically it. It's your basic stand-up shtick before you get to, like, an actual story where he meets Georgia. So he meets a woman named Georgia at the local tavern and whatever. You get, like, this village of rustic people that are there all mining for gold. Actually, it looks like a very inviting place. I'd like to have a beer there. Mm-hmm. And the Tramp shows up, and obviously everyone's looking at the Tramp because he's the Tramp, and he's only got one shoe on. And he's got his other foot just wrapped up. But the real point in which the plot starts to take over is when the big bully there who's got all the women's trying to get with Georgia, and Georgia would rather dance with the tramp, sort of to show him up. And from there, he falls in love with her. And from that moment on, it's a perfect movie. It's like, it takes to that point for me. Like, I need that. I need that extra step that City Lights, I think, gives you early. I know I draw in contrast between the two. It just comes a little later in this movie, and it's a shorter movie. So that's a problem. But there's about 50 minutes of this 77-minute film, which I think's pretty flawless. Mm-hmm. And it starts with that scene.
And it's such an interesting way to get them together, because I really like how Chaplin is not inherently a very cynical director. We'll see him get to much darker themes later in our 5, but with things happen to the tramp the whole film, and very rarely is someone aggressively going after him. Big Jim does it in a moment of madness. The villain is the villain. But here, you know, in George's mind in that brief moment, her attention towards the tramp was never to mock him, but to use him for a moment to get another guy. Mm-hmm. And she just didn't realize how much that affection meant to him.
Right.
And that is a, sad irony.
And that adds into that sadness.
And it's so beautiful that even when I was near the end, which we'll get to, when he's on the nice boat and the photographer was taking his photo, and it's brilliant, kind of back and forth, stay in the right spot, no, stay in the right spot. What eventually makes Chaplin fall off the edge of the boat is not because the photographer's being an asshole. Is that he just miscalculated where he should have gone back to. So it wasn't like the photographer being mean towards him. Yeah. In the same way that lots of other comedy worlds would do. I mean, the Marx Brothers worlds are always about anarchy and madness, and to do those things to anybody. That's not this world, and so even though Georgia is not, to me, a very rich character, I'm not totally into the romance, I'm really interested in this world of hope and affection.
Well, I'm not into the romance like I am from Georgia towards the tramp. The tramp's towards her is what's interesting. Mm-hmm. How it's the first girl that we ever see on film be nice to him.
Yeah.
So, and she's not always nice to him, but she is in that scene, and I believe him towards her, if that makes sense. Him saving up all his money and shoveling snow, which is a pretty funny scene when he shovels all the snow and puts it all in front of the jail's place instead of the other guy's place, just to make money to buy them dinner. That's sweet and touching, and then they don't show up. There's enough there that I'm able to. I feel sad. I mean, I feel sad listening to that. So it's New Year's Eve. She's supposed to come over to dinner with her friends, and they don't. And he walks outside and he hears the bar, the tavern we mentioned earlier, singing "Auld Lang Syne," which is a song that is involving friends and all the times you've had together, and the stuff that you may not remember with each other, but you had them, and one day you're going to forget. So celebrate those times. And
that is your kryptonite, by the way.
Yeah, and they're all together, and they're all together, and they're all singing that song, and they're all happy on New Year's, and he's alone, and he doesn't have anybody. So it's probably more subtle now. It may have been a little more on the nose then, because people don't really sing "Auld Lang Syne" like they used to. But
well, there's something also different, because you have so many romantic films nowadays where the guy's relating to the girl doesn't see the light of day, and there is this turn that has happened in art and I think society as well, where then the guy gets furious with the girl. Yeah. And the girl's wondering, I wasn't part of this story. Where did this happen? And that's not what's happening here. He never is mad at her. The tramp kind of recognizes that she's here, she's not with me. That's what happened. And it's a very simple side. There's never it's never the turn to hating her, the turn to be angry. It's just a moment of I never saw the full story. This is I really wish she was here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been really nice.
And that song is my kryptonite. To that song, though, he's alone, and that song is playing in direct contrast to his situation.
Yeah.
We don't really see anyone who's really ever his friend in this movie, which is different than City Lights, which is too, as far as the Venn diagram is concerned. But I don't know. I liked it. I liked it quite a bit.
And there's a really nice turn with how the Tramp and Georgia end up, how the whole story plays out, because later in the film, through fate, he becomes rich. And I love the narration by Chaplin of, Big Jim goes, "We're going to be millionaires," and then they were. And then it cuts to them being rich in a boat, except for Chaplin looks the same basically, except for like
his clothes fit.
His clothes fit. He's still doing the whole cane, and it looks nicer, but like. He like changed his wardrobe.
He's got a top hat now instead of like the fedora, the bowler.
But I do love the idea that like, okay, we're nearing towards the end. It's gonna be a happy ending, and she's gonna like him now because he's not a tramp. No, she's worried that he's the one who's the stowaway.
Yeah.
And keeps trying to save him, to like return some kindness, but he's the millionaire.
Yeah, that's really good.
That's actually a really sweet thing of like her recognizing that she can go a couple steps further for this man who was once nice to her, and try and repeat the favor. That was a really kind of nice. It's such a low key romance, because basically the whole romance is two people doing one nice thing for each other.
And I don't really ever know if she cares about him.
No, and it might be all it be. It's they had a really nice time, and he got her probably a nice spot in the boat, but. I don't know.
He got her a nice spot on the boat.
I don't know. He's probably got some connections now. But I do also love that...
It's weird seeing him as a millionaire. Just to say, it's weird seeing a tramp as a millionaire.
And I do love because, at this point, I don't know, there were like 70 Tramp short films before this film came out. This was his first feature, I believe.
Feature, yeah.
And there's not continuity with these. This is the Tramp goes west, basically. Mm-hmm. He's poor, next film. No explanation.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking
it's not
about
a sequel.
It's not. Yeah.
It's just, that's kind of how it was more back then,
Mm-hmm.
Superman comics may have repeating villains, but really it's, for fighting again.
Yeah, well, and that pretty much is, well, you think of like the Man with No Name trilogy. I was trying to think of another example of that where those films don't have continuity. In fact,
Bond films sometimes do, and they almost laugh at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we were saying, like Lee Van Cleef in those films played a good guy in For a Few Dollars More and a bad guy in Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So he's not the only person to like repeat a character in that film. I think there are others too, but yeah, no, it really that kind of wasn't that weird. I think that would be weird today.
It would be.
Yeah.
Because we would just expect it because we've had more
sequelitis. We expect a continuation of the story rather than something being episodic, even in television.
Well, also there's the expectation that you will see them all. Like you may miss a Chaplin short or a Chaplin film, and then it's not come back to theaters maybe ever again. Mm-hmm. No, just here's the thing. But they did have serials back then. They had the Sherlock Holmes adventure, 10 out of 12. And Batman had, a 5-parter kind of thing.
Yeah, but it was always like a to-be-continued episode.
Yeah, it was a serialized thing, whereas a lot of these... Marx Brothers, those films, now Groucho's in charge of college, now Groucho is in charge of a country, now Groucho, it's fun. I like that kind of... It allows you to be more ambitious, I think, with your storytelling, where you can just do this, because if Chaplin was thinking about his sequel, it wouldn't end on this happy note.
Yeah.
And that actually... Because this is really kind of looking for a happy ending. So you can end a tramp's financial misery in this story and still tell more stories about the tramp, different aspects of society.
Right. I wouldn't... And to that point, I don't think anyone would want to see a movie where the tramp's rich.
No.
That just doesn't...
Well, that's why I've never seen Arthur 2 on the Rocks. I want to see Arthur poor. It's literally not the movie I want to see.
Yeah, no, it's anyway. Yeah, I guess shutting the book on this one. It's hard to like. I'm trying to think what really stood out to me in this film, or like something I could pull from this going forward with his other stuff. But it is interesting when I'm watching a movie that was made in 1925, and we commented on earlier, where they do something in the film. I don't know how they did it.
Genius filmmaking.
Yeah.
Luckily, the silent film era is such a fascinating era, and actually, this was my very first silent film I ever saw.
Yeah,
I got from the library.
You mentioned that to me before, maybe even on the podcast.
Yeah. so many podcasts have mentioned this.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, obviously, if you mentioned it before, you're
Yeah.
free to mention it again. I just think it was on here because I think I said mine was Nosferatu.
Yeah,
So-
which is, I mean, those are two of the films around the same time, but also Edward Murnau and Charlie Chaplin were perhaps the greatest filmmakers on films. If you get bored at TCM at 3 in the morning, watch some really bad silent films just to appreciate, like, holy crap. These guys were geniuses at editing and effects and pacing and story and character. That did not happen for the entire 20, 30 years of that films.
Which I guess we did cheat because the one we watched wasn't silent.
No. It was all the same footage.
Right.
But this one, I was okay with it because this is one that Chaplin preferred. This was at a time where...
Yes.
This is the 40s when this new edition came out, and silent films were not playing anywhere. And it was just Chaplin going, I'm sure like kids still know of this. And they kind of basically made a more accessible cut of silent films. So he actually ended up liking this one more.
Yeah, he did.
And I've seen both versions. It's the same film. I mean, it is the exact same film, and all the sequences are still well edited with title cards, as we'll see in the next two films. That's the same kind of pacing.
Well, we'll get to it when we talk about it, but I was saying, because this is the only version of the movie now that I've seen, and I can't imagine this movie with title cards, because it just...
He added more in the narration.
Okay.
To make it more, like, if you would just read the title cards verbatim, it wouldn't work. So he did, like, add a bit more.
Yeah.
But it's about as many title cards as City Lights in modern times. So
I don't feel like City Lights has that many, so...
And FW Murnau famously had, like, none. I think Sunrise has, like, 7.
Yeah.
But man, I watched like one. I was up for like a really early Oscar, like 2 Arabian Nights. Had to have been like 500 cards, like filled to the brim. Like, I get it, you wish talkies existed, but there was a beautiful time in cinema where there was a very, very weird thing with technology, where this is how you can make a story, and certain filmmakers like Chaplin made like art in a way that you can't do again, and it's cool.
And that wraps us up.
Wraps it up.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
Is there anything-
I was too. Can't go on after that.
Yeah, I can't. So
yeah, we want to hear your thoughts on the Gold Rush. If you've watched any Chaplin films, if it's your first silent film, it'd be wonderful, because you can also catch this at Filmstruck, and actually it's archive.gov. It's in public domain. But come back next week when we're going to review City Lights. Until then, you can go to theartofmoral.com, where you can leave a comment on this episode or any episode that we've done. And you can email us to let's-take5@theartofmoral.com. You can follow us on Twitter at @theimmortalspod. And also, while you're at the website, you can check out the other podcasts. Yesterday's episode of The Immortals, we reviewed Black Narcissus, a film I really liked. I think we had a contentious conversation over. Also, we covered The Who's album Live at Leeds, The Kinks Sunday Afternoon, and the weird British show The Tomorrow People. And Ad Absurdum is back with an episode about war games. And I can guarantee you that the episode of War Games is better than the movie itself. The movie's silly.
you want to catch me out? Check me on Constant Diversion. That's my YouTube channel, and you can see me, hear me on there.
All right, thank you, everyone. We'll catch you all next week when we review City Lights.
All right, goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.